great-grandfather, Chief Hump, was a hostile. That's what you called him. I'm not being hostile. I'm just bringing points and issues out of the document. We have to talk like this. We could go out, have dinner after this and talk and laugh and be human beings, but right now I have a job and you have a job. And it is a very important job when it's talking about the risk of contamination and impact. So I'm going to end there because I think I've said it enough times, but one of the things I want you to know that us as a cooperating agency, when a lot of tribes said, don't do it, as I said, I want to see the record. I want to show how the Corps of Engineers operates and functions. So why we had to request 3 times and be denied, then finally be invited when it was actually an obligation of the Corps to involve us as a cooperating agency was very disrespectful. But I wanted to prove that by the Corps doing it. Inviting the Corps to consultation, them not showing up, I wanted to prove that. So my main goal as a cooperating agency, as a Tribe Historic Preservation Officer, was to let's see the Corps' track record. If you're gonna go against the enemy, you're gonna study them. If you're gonna play somebody basketball, you're gonna study how they're played. You're gonna sit there and watch them. So over these past few years here, I have again watched the Corps and they have not changed. Over the past 2 years, how you conducted this draft EIS was under Appendix C. Not under, I don't know why your revised policy came out just right after the comment period ended. Your revised policy on consultation with the tribe should have came out 2 years ago. But it just so happened that the comment period ended, and right after that, I got an email saying that, hey, here's our revised policy on how we talk with the tribes. That was ordered 2 years ago. I'm still waiting for OMB to come up with all the compiled agency comments as to uniform process. Not my way, your way. There's only one way, the right way.
Mr. Vance, appreciate your comments. Environmental Director Nelson. You can come up here, Mr. Nelson, if you like. There's a desk up here.
Good afternoon. My name is David Nelson. I'm the Environmental Director for the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. Been here about 34 years, so I know a lot of you old Colonel people that have been there. My issues are pretty simple regarding the EIS. It's pretty hard for me to give environmental comments on a document that looks like this. When we requested the unredacted version so we could make proper comments regarding how the management is going to be, how your spill prevention plan is going to be, it's kind of hard to comment on it when it looks like that. We did comment on the EA a few years ago, and there was more substantial information available in the EA that shouldn't have been done. It should have been an EIS from the beginning. To come back and look at this, and like I tell leadership, it's hard for me to comment because I have nothing to go from. I don't know what your practices are, high flow, low flow, no flow. Right now, if there's a break or spill off that pipeline, the Corps of Engineers does not have a way to access it unless you're going in by helicopter, because there's no docks. There's not enough water at the docks to get you upstream. And I mean, that's your management, which I have a problem with, and I mean yours as a Corps, that the fact that you overlooked our cultural, spiritual, significance tied to this river. As the Great Sioux Nation, as a member of the Great Sioux Nation, it's difficult for me to go out and help protect our resources for the tribe when we get sent stuff like this. I mean, I'm sure that if I sent you some orders and it looked like that, you'd have questions as well. I mean, it's pretty cut and dried. That I've been dealing with this since Master Manual comments, Mr. Rick, DAPL, Keystone, and ours have always been the same as, we have to stand on our treaty, or treaties, I should say, 1851, 1868, and the boundaries of those, which, in my estimation, and from where this current pipeline is, you are in trespass. Because those are Aboriginal homelands. That's something that no line on a map can configure. It's where our ancestors survived, and we continue to try to survive even when we're dealt issues like this, when our comments aren't taken in consideration. The first time I said during the EA was move the pipeline north of Bismarck. I don't know why that wasn't taken into consideration. I mean, right now the state of North Dakota has more pull than any tribal nation, and we have treaties with the government. The billions of dollars that they're worried about losing out on is in revenue from moving or shutting down the pipeline. They never had that 15 years ago, so what would they be worried about it for? We don't get resources like that. I think it was like $35 billion a year that they get as revenue just to permit the pipeline, when actually the permitting part of it should have been done by the tribes. And we already said, no, we don't want it. So my comments are somewhat limited because the documentation that was provided to us is limited. I guess I could say you could have used a better grade of paper. Black and white, it's still black and white. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Nelson, thank you. So I'd start with the first point you brought up, which was ability to respond. This is a perfect opportunity when we're in this accepting your comments of there needs to be an appropriate infrastructure to respond. That's the sort of feedback we're looking for. Okay. Secondly, I was told that Energy Transfers has reached out to the affected nations about spill response exercises. I'm happy to go back to them. What they have stated is that they've gone to these nations to say, hey, they want to make sure everyone has shared understanding of what to do in a spill. I'll go back to them and say, we'll reattack that effort. Thirdly, as I said about the redaction, the agency has to follow the court order. However, I know that the nation has been told by signing an NDA, you can have access to the unredacted document. And I'm fairly certain that offer still stands. Sheila? Yeah, through PHMSA or another federal agency. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir. I guess my question following up to that would be, as a cooperating agency, doesn't that allow us to have full disclosure of all documents in an EA?
Participation through the cooperating agency meeting process. And so we can, in participation in those cooperating agency meetings, when those documents are reviewed and when the conversations are happening with the subject matter experts. I think there's a way that we can reattack that as well through what the Colonel mentioned in our current process, where you've got access to all of the comments that were received, and as a cooperating agency, we'd ask you to help in resolving those comments. right? Regardless of what resource topic they're on. And maybe, Chairman, we can have that conversation and make sure that you are familiar with the system that the tribe can access all of those documents in, and then also identify how exactly you use the system where the comments received by the public are housed. And if you chose to identify people that you wanted to have access to that, and maybe that's you, that could go in directly and say, Cheyenne River suggests that this comment is addressed in this manner. That opportunity exists in front of us right now. And happy to have a separate meeting to walk you through exactly what that looks like.
Well, I guess just to comment from day one when we requested it, and that was at 2 different meetings at Standing Rock. When they're not a cooperating agency, but we are, they're our sister tribe, and we work together on different issues, but when we're requesting documentation so we can adequately comment and properly comment on to address spillage, contamination, response time, that should have been done during the EA, or the EIS, I mean.
I also don't know what occurred prior to us sitting here with you today. I do know Standing Rock has had the opportunity to both see unredacted documents and also participate in reviewing them and providing comment. So let's just say that moving forward, this opportunity is here, and if it's not well understood by whomever the tribal council decides that they want to participate in that endeavor, we can resolve that today. Right.
Okay, I appreciate that. Because I cannot give them the right answer if I can't read the answer from the page. Thank you.
At this time, we'll ask the Army Corps if they have any more responses to the issues that the tribe has brought to light. And just real briefly, just a comment on your comment about PHMSA and the NDAs. This is new information to us. And the whole point of having this information is for all our people to know the dangers of this oil pipeline, and not to sign an NDA where we can't tell nobody to have that information in front of us, in front of our people. So that was the whole point, not to conceal more information from our people. So it doesn't make much sense to us just off the top of my head, you know. But we'll give the floor to the Army Corps, and if you have any more comments on the issues that are brought up by the tribe, you can respond.
Mr. Vance, did he step out? Okay, just, Chairman, just a point on Appendix C. He's correct, that still exists within our agency. However, that has gone up to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, Mr. Connor, right? And we're fairly certain that that's going to be taken out of our process. But I think that's a big issue because we did not use Appendix C during this. And I know Mr. Vance has had that explained by members of our team. We're happy to do that again. And I'd love to sit down with Mr. Vance and we'll walk through that. I'll end my piece and ask if the team has anything else. One, I appreciate the invitation. I told Mr. Walters, I told Mr. Vance this at our fall meetings. I value this consultation. I believe the agency does. I personally cannot speak for anything that's happened prior, but as Ms. Newman said, there's an opportunity going forward. And Mr. Nelson, Mr. Walters, Mr. Vance, Chairman, members of the Tribal Council, we're here to listen. Over.
Again, we thank you for coming out and hearing our leadership out in these matters that are important to us. And again, we're against the pipeline. We're against the Army Corps of Engineers issuing any permits for this pipeline. and we still feel that way since we shared the resolution with you, and this council still feels the same way. We stand against the Dakota Access Pipeline. With that, if you didn't have any more comments at this time, Colonel, we can go on to the next. Parsons Trench, I believe, was the next one on the list. The individual, Mr. Parson, had created this trench along the Cheyenne River, diverting the river, changing the course of the river away from his home site, which is a off-reservation tract of land south of the Cheyenne River, and we believe that was eroding into his property. So he come on our side and literally dug a trench through our lands without our permission, without our knowledge, until we've was discovered later that year, I believe. And we've actually filled it in at one point. But that wasn't enough to stop the flow of water, and the water was able to penetrate the fill that went through, and so we have that issue currently, and it's just gotten worse. The trench got bigger now, and there's been more damage done to our river, to our soils, to our bottomlands, to our trees, the flora, the fauna. And that continues to grow as we speak. And we need the Army Corps of Engineers to do some, like I said, engineering to help stop this Parsons Trench. We believe it was illegal. I believe the BIA did issue a trespass notice to Mr. Parsons, but no action has taken since that time. And we understand the Army Corps of Engineers has a duty to regarding waters of the United States. So we have that issue that we're going through at this time and currently going through. I believe it's been 4 years now. Mr. Walters, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you, Colonel, and the crew for coming. First of all, again, the Corps issued a permit to Mr. Parsons, right? For his side of the land, right? That's what was said at the August meeting. I remember at the August meeting, I asked that very same question. And again, a permit was issued on our lands. That's our lands. Again, that Cheyenne River is our boundaries. And there was no consultation with the tribes. Again, I'm gonna bring up the Executive Order 13175. When anything's done on our lands, people, there's supposed to be consultation with the tribes. And again, the permit was issued after the fact to Mr. Parsons. To cover him or what? To schmooze it over? It's okay for someone to come across onto our lands and to dig a trench and reroute the river, but if we were to go on the other side of the land and rerouted the river, guess what? We'd be sitting behind bars. So after the fact, this permit was issued to Mr. Parsons by the Corps engineers. And again, there was no consultation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Council, do you have any comments on the Parsons Trench that you want to share? Mr. Russo, good.
Thank you again for coming. So I want to just touch back on a cooperative agency versus nation to nation. I went out to the Pentagon and met with the general out there. I think it was, I'm not sure who it was a couple years ago, and we brought this issue up, and I'm really concerned that, you know, and I think cooperative agency, I think like level, so like two company size elements having having some kind of discussion versus, this top tier nation to nation, because our tribe is a domestic dependent nation, and we enjoy separate sovereign in the respect as even a greater respect than states do, and it just downgrading to have us in this realm of cooperative agencies, because it, like our elder Mr. Vance shared with his vote theory, is that it's not necessary that these votes or that these comments are taken into consideration, but when the tribe says no, that should mean no. And for the Corps of Engineers to if you consult with the barges down in the southern part of the country, to see if they have enough water to operate their barges and haul their goods on the river. And that consultation, I'm not sure if they're even considered a cooperative agency. They probably have more respect than tribes do in that sense. So I'd like to see that, that this cooperative agency nonsense kind of goes away, and that we start, looking at these treaties that we have, because cooperative agency it's not you wouldn't put China or Russia into a cooperative agency. That's full blown nation to nation correspondence there. So that's what I'd like to see. I know it might be a little ahead of my time sitting here to talk about these grand ideas. And resonate what my colleague Mr. Walters shared. So the issue with the Parsons Trench is just that, it shines a great light on the discrimination of our tribal members by the United States prosecutors. So they don't hesitate. They don't second guess when it's a Native American, unless they can't win the case. We see that recently in a few cases where they've declined to even prosecute any case because it's not a home run for them. So we got these federal prosecutors in Pierre and everywhere else. And I'm telling you this because you're a federal agent as well. And especially being a colonel, you should have the ability to, help put these lower people in check and let them know that, hey, someone's got to be in charge and someone's got to be making sure that everyone's following the rules. So if these federal prosecutors are using their position to, get a high score, to get a good resume, say, oh yeah, we won every case we tried, but they only tried the easy cases, or we won every case we tried, but they only prosecuted the Indians and not the non-Indians that were building trenches. So it's a huge problem in Indian country that we're facing today, is the discrimination. A lot of our members, we go leave the reservation boundary, immediately pulled over, searched, tags expired, all these rules that we're not acclimated to. As soon as we get off the res, we're pulled over and we're persecuted for not following the law and not being lawful citizens when we are lawful citizens on our own sovereign nation. So I think there needs to be a discrimination of prosecution by the United States prosecutors and by other sovereigns. We need to, maybe they need to get on board as well and start doing these correspondence and look at us as, hey, they got their own laws. So maybe we need to understand that when they come off the reservation and go shopping in Pierre, that we need to be more lenient. So, but I appreciate you coming. Those are two issues. I do want to talk a little more on another topic, but I'll wait until we get there. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Walters and Mr. Moran, and then Director Nelson.
Just real quick, excuse my words, but I'm gonna use some words that maybe people aren't gonna appreciate. I wanna go back to Mr. Parsons, and I understand why he probably did what he did. It's because it's getting close to his ranch. But I wanna talk about the 1944 Pick-Sloan Act. When our whole agency was run off that river, we were raped of 104,492 acres of tribal and allotted lands. And it's still happening today. We had the best river bottoms. We have the Cheyenne River tributary, and we also have the Morrow River tributary. We had the best prime bottom lands. And today, we still get raped of our lands. Our lands on the bottom lands are ruined because of the backing up of the waters from Lake Oahe. Or the waters can't get out into Lake Oahe because they got to go over a hill. And we've asked the Corps engineers in the past to dredge at the mouths of the rivers. And the Corps engineer says they don't dredge. But they do dredge because they go to the Mississippi and they dredge for the barge trafficking so that they can float their fertilizer down the river, Mississippi River. I've been to a lot of these meetings where a lot of people shared that story. So we continue to lose our lands because Lake Oahe. Lake Oahe is a man-made dam. And I always said, when you mess with the Creator's creation, this is what we wind up with. It's a punishment. And it's a punishment that isn't because we did it. It's a punishment because the federal government came in and ran our people off the river. Losses of our medicinal plants, losses of trees, berries, a lot of medicines. And I always respected Unchi Marcela because she talked about mouse beans. And none of us knew what they were. But it's still happening today on our tributaries. The water levels in the Lake Oahe are kept down. They're kept down until they need water downstream. And that's usually for the barge trafficking. They bring the waters up, it slaps our banks, more of our land falls off into the lake. Sacred sites, our TCPs, whatever, get lost, ruined, taken away because of the issues of that controlling of the water on Lake Oahe. We need to keep our water here, but it don't happen. It's low. It's way low. I think it was like 15 feet below the levels it should have been. I also sat on the Great Plains Tribal Water Alliance, and that was really talked about at our last meeting. But I don't want to use the words that was used in there. But give us our water. Take care of these issues. Quit giving permits without consultation. Listen to the tribes. We are the river owners. The 1868 treaty says the east bank on. Our southern boundaries is the south bank on that Cheyenne River. It's very disheartening growing up on the river and seeing where it's at today. Going down and getting dead trees because of all the flooding. And I know it's a natural thing too. But our good bottomlands are silted in. There's noxious weeds down there today. Thank you.
Councilman Moran. Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me, Chairman?
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Iga, sente usted na petis papelo len petiki. De toi en kaga ki tukaya oni o kiksi apta hecha. Hani le milahaska ki le taku ota shicha ichu. oyati on kapaki we talked it. Tikia on kuam. Tuahena. Kiospa on kapikule. No spire no oyati. Lakota. Let it go oyati. It's a wakantan on kaka. Now la kolia piki on ha. It's a ogla kaptecha. Now let me coach you kile. Ewa kantan ka. Now hit you say. O gachnig up to hecha, let's go with Hasha. Now let me ask you the Omuga up to that. Okiske, Ishunte, Picha. They teach one at the Gile, Mokocha, and Hop. Now let we talk up to hecha. Yeah. We talk up to hecha. I'd like to, Bryson was council rep since 2000. We got in, I took some elders to Pier early 2001, and they were coming up with a programmatic agreement. 2004, we signed on to it as the CRST. Now, Wijaka means that you have to tell the truth. I'd like to make 4 points to the core. One is, this is a government to government consultation, IRA and USA and states. But one thing, we're not Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. That's a lie. That's not who we are. That was forced upon us by fixed bayonet, Gatling guns, and artillery. And they used military Tapa techniques of brainwashing and forced coercion to get that across to us, starting from probably my father's generation, probably starting from the 1868 treaty, because they violated that right off. The 1851, the land-based treaty is what we're standing on. This 1868 treaty, the United States needs to, they said, oh, we're sorry, but they need to obey their own rules. And they took a oath to the U.S. Constitution, which says treaties are supreme law of the land. The judges need to recognize that. That's good. My first point I'd like to make. The second point is that there's an incident over here. That issue, Bureau came in. So the Corps and the Bureau of Indian Affairs on this water diversion that happened, you need to, what's your responsibility on that? It needs to be rectified, I guess, and changing the course of the water. Number 3 is on February 7th, 2022, the United States came up, wanted comments, and that was the deadline date. And they come up with the interpretation of water. So our traditional knowledge, which needs to lead the way on our homelands in the 1851 treaty territory. That has to be understood. The fourth point would be DAPL. Now DAPL, and there's certain elements here in this country that have invested in the oil pipelines, and the one seeking the Oval Office again, which is investment into DAPL, and let's drill, baby, drill. But right now, our grandmother and our mother isn't going to tolerate another nuclear explosion. Something big's going to happen. We were told these through our messages, from our communication centers from the one who created us. So DAPL in 1851 treaty territory, you have not consulted with the real landowners who are the Chichuan way out there. The 4 bands here are the real landowners, the resources, and we protect that for our great creator. No fear of prior informed consent to date. So that needs to be under consideration right now. The Corps of Engineers need to stand on. USA needs to stand on in our 1851 treaty territory. We need to look at who's behind this root of evil, I'm gonna call it. You know, the military-industrial complex, oligarchs, and these foreign extractive industries like China over here in our sacred Black Hills, threatening the water. So everything is a threat to us. I want to protect life here on Earth, and the water. When you go without, our people were given instructions that we need to return to. Humanity needs to return to the original instructions given to them. That means white, black, yellow, red, globally. Everything is global now. And the water is being polluted left and right. Even our groundwater, the pesticides, and babies suffering right now because of the water. You know, the Corps has 8 functions. One is water quality. That's a big issue. Going back to that 2004 programmatic agreement, we want amendments of our interpretation in the programmatic agreement. And we want to strengthen that programmatic agreement to our favor as the treaty states. If there's a gray area, it falls in place with the owners. That's the key point out there. Please take this as God's truth. You know, we can speak Lakota in English today. And the U.S. government, call them Melahanskas, the U.S. government is seeking ecological traditional knowledge, which we have. We need to share that in order to save ourselves, our planet, our neighborhoods from what's coming. Water is life. You go out and fast for 4 days, 4 nights, and call out seeking knowledge and information and wisdom from our Creator. You'll understand that water is very important. You can go without food for probably 2 weeks or more, but you can't go without water. That's the very essence of what's going on globally right now, is that we're under attack. So I hope the Corps will take this and stand down now in our 51 treaty territory. I'd like a response on that Parson, Chairman, that diversion of water.
Okay, yeah, we're just taking more comments from the council members. So then we'll hear back from the Army Corps when the council is done speaking on the Parsons Trench issue. Next is Mr. Bringsmoney and Mr. Nelson.
Oh, okay. He yielded. Oh, okay. I got you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Bringsmoney. I'm just listening to some of the comments being made, but one of the things in regards to the Pig Sloan is a lot of the water was flooded, but there was forced removals, but there was a lot of infrastructure that was lost there too, as well, under the water that was flooded. A lot of that infrastructure was, our leaders back then, they were pretty progressive, and they constructed all those. They built those for tribal members, but those were lost. And of course, a lot of the families were moved and centralized here. A lot of the families had their own lands out in the area, but things really changed after the flooding took place. Our people, the thing is that we never knew what was going on with the government when all of this was taking place. From the senators and the congressmen and the deals and the ideas that they're coming up with, I imagine this consultation is a result of it, but never knew. That even boils down to the statehood of South Dakota and how this was formed. this statehood, I guess, a race for South Dakota between Republicans and Democrats. It really pushed what happened there at the Wounded Knee for our people. Our families didn't know they're being targeted and pushed, and it was a revenge act against our people. My family is heavily involved with fighting the U.S. armies, standing up for our nation, for our people, our way of life. You heard Mr. Vance speak. He speaks good and he's talking truthful. He knows because it's important for our future generations. That's where our people always stood, for our future generations. Not just us here or 2 years down the road, but the future. And not just for us too, but also for, the white nations as well too. Because if we continue to destroy our mother, then we're not going to live no more either. And you can look at the other areas. I know that there's a lot of pipelines in the grounds. I know that. Over in Michigan, Flint, they've been affected heavily. And those populations are dealing with those health issues. California, they're dealing with issues. And the only one that can fix that is Maka, our mother, Earth. And maybe she ain't gonna fix that until we're all gone. And we have to think about the generations after, or what we're leaving for them. If we just think about ourselves right now, we're not gonna have nothing. This is a Lakota way of thinking. Not a what can I take all right now and secure for myself and just my lineage, but for all of us. This is the way we are as a people. We have a lot of sacred sites. We have a lot. There's a lot of people that died, in the hundreds of millions that died here. And that isn't, gonna be taken serious by anybody that did what they had to do to have our lands. You see, we come from Maka, we come from these areas, these regions. That's what makes us a nation. We come from this nation, this land. This land, we're a part of it as much as it's a part of us. If this land dies, we die. This Parsons Trench that we're discussing, there are some wrongs that were done there, and there is an upside for the tribe as well, because what sort of resolution? I guess we're talking about it, but I want to ask you, what is being done about that? Can you answer that, please?
I can, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
Brings plenty.
Bringsman?
Brings plenty.
Brings plenty. Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, acknowledge Mr. Walter's comment. Acknowledge yours. I'm going to turn over to Sheila here, shortly. The United States Army Corps of Engineers is in the enforcement arm, right? We have notified another federal agency which does that, BIA, which is part of the DOI, and at the highest of our levels, Army. Okay, I know Wendy from the BIA is here, and I think it's unfair to question her on that. But we are engaged with another federal agency to, as you stated, Brings Plenty, right this wrong. I'll turn over to Sheila for more specific details.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And when this was brought to our attention from one of the meetings that you had as staff level engagement with our folks, we started the inquiry initially with BIA, Ms. Diane Klieger, who I think you probably all know. So she kicked it to the regional office, and we did receive information back from the DOI solicitor's office that the enforcement action for the trespass was being pursued. Our assistant secretary, Mr. Connor, I think maybe you've met him, and Mr. Jamie Pinkham also inquired directly to the Department of the Interior to find out what action has been taken on the trespass. And as of yesterday, DOI said they were still looking into it. I can share those direct contacts with you, but it's definitely with the DOI solicitor's office. When it comes to the Clean Water Act issue under Section 404 that was discussed and that Mr. Walters brought up, we did pursue that as well. There was the, as the original trench was dug, it was dug primarily in upland with wetland points that were jurisdictional under 404. So that was done in violation. And we pursued that with the Environmental Protection Agency, who would, under the 404 program, have the authority to take an enforcement action. The after the fact that you mentioned was for those particular points after the EPA declined to take enforcement action. So we did not authorize the trench because that was not an activity that required any authorization from us. The subsequent discharge for the points, so that side casting fill did. So that is history. Nothing we can do about it at this point in time, but the status right now is, I think, twofold. If I understood you correctly, Chairman, you're looking for an engineered solution for the issues that the trench is causing. So I think that's something that we can explore with you through our other programs, through whether it's the Tribal Partnership Program or planning assistance to states and tribes. And then I think the second point is the enforcement for the trespass itself is solely with the Department of Interior, and to the extent we can continue to push our federal partner to say, can we get an answer on where that particular enforcement action is going? I think that you also have that opportunity as a tribal nation to go directly to the Department of Interior Solicitor's Office and say, what is the status of this trespass?
Mr. Nelson, did you have anything to add
Mr.
to this
Chairman,
matter?
not
Go ahead.
That's okay. So one thing is that if we went over there and moved his home, then what would happen? If we went over and moved his home, who would enforce that? This would be the same process?
Are you talking about
That guy's home? Because all those lands are all historically tribal lands, our nation's lands. So if we went and moved his house without getting a permit or anything, then what?
It certainly would not be the United States Army you'd be talking to.
So he should be talking to the United States Army as well, because that's something he did. So the thing is that this is systemic discrimination. This is what's taking place. It's okay to do it to the Indian, but not to the other. Us guys are always getting the bad end of the deal. And this can go all the way back to the policies that's put in place in dealing with the Indian problem here in the United States. If we're gonna be partners or whatever it is that everybody's looking forward to, I'm glad you guys came here to talk about this. But that needs a change on how things are dealt with. We're the first people of these here lands. I mean, nobody seems to understand that anymore. We're still here. There should be, if the justice is going to be barrels pointed at us, they should be pointed at them too. Because who's looking after our rights? Who's looking after our interest, our well-being? We're the richest nation, but really poor when it comes to monetary funds because of everything that was done to us. A big part of that is the policies put in place that have failed us. So, yeah, you can talk to the other company or whatever your department that you got to visit with, but something needs to be done. Something worthwhile talking about, at least. You imagine having your children and them being just treated differently. That's how we are with the United States government. We got the states, you got the tribes. You got the children of the United States, you got the stepchild. We're the stepchild. We never get a fair handshake. We know you answer to somebody. We know that these consultations usually go different. We know that there's an agenda already put in place, and we're just here to listen. I wasn't going to say nothing, but some of the words being shared, I needed to speak. we're interested in having a life for our nation. We're interested in having a future. This would be something good to do. I know it's small on Mr. Parsons' part, but that should be corrected, engineering wise, and also to enforcement as well. If I can ask you to do that, please.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes, sir. Again, thank you again, Colonel. I was one of the first ones that was notified about this trench, or trenches. There's been two of them dug. First one was dug in 2010. It silted back in and didn't work the way he wanted to. The next time I was informed, it was in 2012, where he actually went down in the winter, because that's the only way he could have got a track hole across there, dug the trench over a mile long, bermed up sand and bagged up sand on the south bank to divert the water towards the trench, which I brought these issues up to the Corps of Engineers, to US EPA, US Fish and Wildlife, because those are nesting habitats of the least tern piping plover, and basically were destroyed by his actions of pushing it with a cat or a dozer. Since then, we went down and we plugged the mouth of it up so we could stop any more erosion. We were scolded, said that we could be in trouble for doing that, and that we had to go out and show that those were tribal lands, which we requested the Bureau of Indian Affairs to do a cadastral survey. They got a hold of the Bureau of Rec or BOR, yeah, BLM, and they actually come down and measured everything and showed that the trees, the land and everything was always one continuous piece. So it's always been tribal land. In the meantime, through many of your predecessors, about every 2 years, I believe, every 3 years. So there's probably been 7 of you that I've talked to. And the issue is that the natural attenuation of a river system, no matter where it's at, I mean, that's Mother Nature. It's going to change on its own. Where this individual, I mean, he basically stole resources by digging the trench, resuspended hazardous material from mining operations upstream. That's arsenic, selenium, mercury, that was basically being, every time it floods and starts washing banks, gets resuspended and goes back downstream. So the estimate that was done, I believe it was 11 years ago, was 290,000 plus to plug this up. And I was told that we were given 50. And when we have to haul clean fill in there because we can't push dirt that's been inundated with contaminated soil from the mining operations back in there, because we're just causing a bigger problem. All clean fill is going to have to be brought back in there to stabilize this. Understandably, when we lose lands through this natural attenuation and flooding and high and low flow water, we have no recourse to go back and say, hey, we had to rebuild an entire road system out of the Cherry Creek community because Mother Nature had her way and changed the channel and started cutting away the road, so the tribe had to go to the Bureau and whoever else to get money to rebuild the road. So we know what it's like to lose those lands. I mean, we've been going through this for how many years now? So my point is that unless it's actually closed, where the resuspension of these hazards is stopped, and I mean, because we're looking at land loss, the local rancher that was leasing there to graze because he's paying the lease on it. And it's tribal land, so the tribe's losing out on those resources. I mean, this is a lot bigger than what's being portrayed. It's something that, again, like Mr. Bringsplain brought up, what would he like it if we went over and relocated him? So, thank you.
Mr. Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, how many violations are on this Parsons Trench? 1, 2, 3? Because you said where the wetland part of it, that point, that's a violation. Is that the only violation?
Yeah.
Or what about where he dozed? He dozed that off to plug the river, the original river.
So I think that under the Clean Water Act, the violation was specifically the points. So the discharge for the points, not the berm. And again, this is history, right? So I'm not looking at it today. But if that's your question, what was determined a violation?
That would be a violation to me if he dozed that river shut. That's a violation. You know, I really have to agree with Council Representative Brings Plenty. Again, 1944, Pick Slonak took 104,492 acres away from this tribe and our people because our people were flooded out. People waited until the water was to their doorsteps even, and then put up here on this windy flat where there was other promises made that were broken. And here's one person versus a whole agency, many people, plus 104,000 plus acres of land that were taken away. Isn't there a feeling about that? Or, you know, I hate to say it like this, kill the Indian and save the man. But that's what it sounds like. And it's sad. This is 2024. Them days should have been over a long time ago. We need help. Someone has to stick up for us too. Thank you.
Any more comments, council members, on the Parsons Trench? Army Corps, do you have any other comments on this matter? Okay, we can go on to our next, on the agenda we have CRST, Army Corps project updates 1 through 3, Hawakpa, Awakia, Baja, and BIA Route 2 near On the Tree. We can turn it over to Army Corps to initiate those discussions, give those updates.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Drew Miner, our Chief of Planning, and Sarah Miller, who's the Program Manager for that. And we're going to go through 3 projects. We'll talk through and welcome and answer any questions specific to each question. So, Drew, if you guys want to come up here. And I believe, council members, I believe the team handed out a paper slide deck, or we can go around and, did those go out? Yeah, those, yeah, that one that the chairman has in his hand that we'll go over through and recommend we go by project. If there's a question for each project, please ask, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council. Really excited to partner with the tribe on these 3 studies. I think it's a great opportunity. Looking forward to it, and I was excited to see our agreements get signed right before the holidays. So, going to give a quick overview of the 2 different authorities that we're using to study, to conduct these studies. And then dive into a little bit of the details of what the studies are going to entail and kind of a general schedule. If you don't mind, I'm going to start actually with BIA Route 2. If you go to slide 4, that is conducted under Section 14. And what that is, in a quick nutshell, is Section 14 authorizes us to construct emergency stream bank protection for public facilities. In this case, that is BIA Route 2, the road itself. And I believe there's also a water line at risk there. And that is protected from bank failure caused by natural erosion. The process under Section 14, once we get approved for funding, and is again all three of these studies, they can either be funded two ways. That's either through program. We get a request in, it goes into kind of a list of eligible projects, and then as funded programmatically, it competes with all the other projects in the nation. The other way is through congressionally directed spending, which all three of these projects were quote unquote earmarked by Senator Rounds. Anyway, so we got funding to start BIA Route 2 this past year. That study will look at identify alternatives, evaluate those alternatives, and then make a recommendation on the best way. Again, the limitations of this program, it's only for stream bank protection, so the alternatives are going to be very limited in that regard. But once we identify a recommended plan, get an approved project or approved report, then we can move into design and construction, and that would require a project partnership agreement with the tribe at that time. Typically, Section 14 studies are 65% federal, 35% non-federal. However, there are two provisions in WRDA that reduce the cost sharing requirements for the tribe. One is what we call a tribal waiver that is updated every year. Currently, that's about $650,000. So that is taken directly off the tribe's cost share. The second is what we call an ability to pay provision, and that subsequently reduces the tribe's final cost share by 75%. So in a lot of our projects, the math shakes out to about 90% federal, 10% non-federal, or tribal in this case. However, with that $650,000 right now, that would essentially mean if we had a project in the $2 million range, there would be no cash required by the tribe. Anything over $2 million would be about 10%. You would get all credit for the lands and any working kind. I would say typical Section 14 studies, typically involve rock or some sort of enforcement. They typically range in the $1 to $2 million range. Obviously nothing is cheap these days, but expect it to be in that $2 million range. I think we're finishing a study right now that has a $2 million recommendation on a study. So hopefully little to no cash would be required on a project for this one. If you flip to the next page, that just kind of shows the area that we're looking at, where that stream bank has eroded all the way to, it's currently less than 100 feet from BIA Route 2. Obviously, if that were to keep eroding at the current rate that it has within the next several years, next couple of years, that road will be completely impacted, and that'll impact all the residents that are traveling on that road, as well as that water line. So that is what we are working to develop an alternative to protect that. If you flip to the next page, again, as I said, this authority is fairly limited, so therefore our alternatives are fairly limited. You're kind of looking at some sort of either riprap or sheet pile wall or some sort of spur dikes to really reinforce the stream bank. Again, as I mentioned, we had just started this study this past year. We're currently in the initial alternatives development and evaluation. We'll be kind of doing that detailed engineering analysis over the next couple months in the spring. After sometime this spring or after the snow melt, Mr. Vance will be coordinating with you on, doing the cultural resources survey work sometime here in the April to June timeframe, probably we're looking at. But our goal on this study is to develop kind of what we call a tentatively selected plan sometime in the May timeframe and release that draft report. That goes out for what we call concurrent reviews, where our agency will look at it, review it from a technical standpoint, from a policy standpoint, and then it'll also go out for the tribal review at that point. After those reviews, we take all the feedback